Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight with us. My name is Brian Layton. I'm the Chief of Police with the Fredericksburg Police Department. It's great to see everybody. I want to thank you all for registering and attending this educational event that we put together for you. We are very excited to share some information with you about the structure of our agency, information about our CLIA National Accreditation, what it does for us, what it does for the community, information about our officers' specialized training and education that they receive here at the Fredericksburg Police Department, as well as information about the department's complaint process. We have three wonderful presenters with us tonight. First is our Police Department Public Information Officer, Ms. Sarah Kirkpatrick, and she will be reviewing our agency structure. Next, we have Lieutenant Rashawn Coles from our Professional Standards Office, and Lieutenant Coles is going to provide information about our CLIA National Accreditation and our complaint process. And then we have Lieutenant Jim Keebler, who is currently our Communications Manager for our 911 Center, and he will provide information about some of our officers' specialized training and education that they receive at the Fredericksburg PD. We'll close this evening with me answering some of the written questions provided during the registration process and or written questions that came in from here when you came in tonight. So, without further ado, I'd like to invite Ms. Kirkpatrick to provide you with an overview of our police department.
All right, so again, my name is Sarah Kirkpatrick. I'm the Public Information Officer here for the Fredericksburg Police Department. Thank you all for coming out to learn more about our organization. It's really great to see the community is interested in what we have going on here. Again, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our department. Our department, every day when employees come to work, they're guided by three things. They're guided by our mission, our vision, and the city values. Last year, in 2019, the department adopted its vision and its mission statement. Our vision statement is to be a premier law enforcement agency committed to delivering unparalleled service. And we do that by living out our mission, which is to provide outstanding service through innovative policing techniques and community partnerships to improve the quality of life for everyone. And when we drafted this, we realized that it is paramount for us to have solid community partnerships in order to provide the service that our city residents expect from us. We also embrace our city values that inspire us to take pride and ownership in our department by promoting leadership at all levels. In 2018, the city adopted values. There's 6 of them, and we make sure that we live out those values every day. Those values are abundant compassion, agile innovation, essential engagement, energized work environment, outstanding customer service, and unwavering stewardship. And there's a lot more information about each value on the city's website, definitions, how you can live out those values, and I encourage all of you to visit the city's website to learn more about those values. Our department proudly serves the entire city of Fredericksburg, which is 11 square miles, and home to approximately 27,000 people. We have 97 full-time employees and 3 part-time across 3 divisions: patrol, support services, and detective division. And I'm going to go through a little bit about each one momentarily. We have 73 sworn officers, and they are all Virginia Department DCJS certified. And this is one of my favorite things about working for the Fredericksburg Police Department is we have been nationally accredited since 2009, and we're the only agency in Planning District 16 to obtain national accreditation. And Lieutenant Coles is going to talk more about why that's so important and why we maintain that accreditation momentarily. Okay, so Patrol Division. They are our boots on the ground and typically the first people to interact with the public. They respond to calls for service, maintain traffic safety, generate reports, and attend to community events. They're made up of 2 platoons, so when one platoon is working, the other one is off. And each platoon has 2 watch commanders, 3 sergeants, and 3 squads. And typically a squad has approximately 4 to 6 officers, and they overlap to ensure that there's ample staffing in the city at all times. There's a lot of specialties within patrol. They include our community police officers, our canine units, parking enforcement, our school resource officer, our special equipment tactical team, which is typically people refer to it as a SWAT team, our unmanned aircraft system team, firearms training unit, and the crisis intervention team. And last year alone, our patrol division generated more than 5,100 reports and responded to over 37,000 calls. So Detective Division, they are our criminal investigation division. They support patrol by furthering investigation for major specialized crimes. We have detectives assigned to domestic violence, vice narcotics, and general assignment. And last year, our detective division was assigned over 500 cases. And last but certainly not least, the backbone of our agency is our support services division. They provide the administration, maintenance, training, recruitment, and logistics for the department. And also under the support services division is our E911 Communications Center. So a little bit more about our E911 Communications Center. They don't just handle calls for police or law enforcement. They handle calls also for fire and for rescue for the city of Fredericksburg. All of our communications officers meet national standards for training. And last year, the center received 22,000 calls, emergency calls, and approximately 46,000 calls for service to police, fire, and rescue. So that's a little bit about our department. I encourage you all to visit our website, which is police.fxbg.com. We try to put as much information out there as possible, and we're always adding content to inform the public and make sure that we provide everything that you all need to know. So I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Rashawn Coles, who's going to talk about our national accreditation.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out and taking some time to learn about our department. We appreciate your participation. I am Lieutenant Coles. I'm in charge of our Professional Standards Division, which includes accreditation and professional standards investigations. Ms. Kirkpatrick kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but the department has been nationally accredited since 2009. This is a huge undertaking for our department. Started under former Chief Nye and has been continued by Chief Layton. It really takes the whole entire police department to be nationally accredited. Everyone has a responsibility to the process, and without the full cooperation of the police department, this can't be done. It also has to include other city agencies, to include the city manager's office and our city council, so we appreciate their participation in our accreditation process. As you can see, accreditation has been around, a national accreditation, which is CALEA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, has been around since 1979. It seeks to create a national standard for law enforcement. There is no national standard for law enforcement from the federal agents, from federal level or state level. We have DCJS, which is the Department of Criminal Justice Services, who tells us what we should be doing, but there's no national standard. CALEA seeks to set that standard, and it's a voluntary commitment to that standard. We undertook that in 2009, and since 2009, we've been reaccredited 3 times. Again, 34 agencies in the state of Virginia have this distinction, and we are happy to say that the city of Fredericksburg is one of those agencies. So enrollment into the CALEA process is a 5-step process. You have your enrollment process, self-assessment, assessment, commission decision, and maintaining CALEA accreditation. Again, enrollment into CALEA is a voluntary commitment, and the big word I want to emphasize is a commitment. Our agency made that commitment in 2009, and again, it involves everybody in the process. CALEA requires us to maintain and comply with 459 standards every single year. Each of those standards are reviewed by independent assessors outside of our agency through CALEA to assure that we are in compliance. The self-assessment process starts with us. All right, we make sure that we have standards. Every one of our standards meet or exceed the best practices in law enforcement. These can range from ethics to performing vehicle stops in the search and seizure process. Each standard provides us guidance, again, on the best practices. CALEA doesn't tell us how we should do it, but they say what we should have in our policies. All right. The assessment process, the whole process takes 4 years, and during the 4th year, CALEA will come on site and they would do a assessment of our agency. They're going to review all of our policies, and they're going to review our proofs of compliance. So we have to prove every year through the 4-year cycle that we are complying with all the standards that CALEA requires us to have. So in that 4th year, they'll send 3 assessors to our department to assess all of our files and proofs of compliance. And they will also do some ride-alongs, spontaneous ride-alongs with officers to make sure that they know the policies and procedures. Those officers don't know who they're going to be, that the assessors might ride with. Additionally, all of our stakeholders in the community could also get a surprise visit by their assessors. Some of those stakeholders can be the city manager's office, superintendent of the schools, or anybody else within the city government that we participate and cooperate with. So after the fourth year on-site assessment, the chief of police and accreditation manager will attend a public hearing. Actually, I digress. Another important function of the on-site is there is a public forum that the commission puts on, not the city police department, but the commission puts on a public forum that is not on-site at the police department, where the citizens can come in and speak about the police department, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. You can call in or you can come in. All right. This year, in 2019, we received our accreditation award. We had a public forum, and we only had 2 citizens that showed up. Commission review. After our 4th year process, we go through the commission review. Chief of police and the accreditation manager will go out to a predetermined site that's picked by CALEA, and is usually during a conference. And we will sit and listen to what the commissioners have to say about our department. Whether we fulfilled our needs for our standards, how the on-site went, and what have we done, address things that we've done through the 4 years that may be new to our department. After they are satisfied with that, they go and they will issue us a reaccreditation award. Again, in 2019, we went through our 4th year review, and we received our 3rd award. So the benefits of CALEA. Obviously, in this ever-changing world, law enforcement practices, policies, and procedures, they always are constantly evolving. Through CALEA, we have the luxury of having research on best practices, on what's the best standard to handle any kind of event, or what is the best policies to make sure that your officers are getting the assistance that they need. This is all benefits towards the public. This is benefits for our city and also benefits for the agency as a whole. It provides a platform for our agencies to stay current with best practices, and in turn, it helps to promote police legitimacy within our community. When our community sees us as a legit police department, the atmosphere of trust and cooperation can manifest. So that's a little bit about accreditation. And now I'll turn it back over to Lieutenant Keebler.
Thanks everybody for being here. I'm going to talk about our training and education. And when we talk about how we train and educate our officers, it kind of begs the question, what do we expect? What does the community expect our police officers to be able to do? And let me illustrate that with an example. I want you to imagine for a moment, it's a couple of days before Christmas, right? Downtown is packed, people are in the restaurants, Central Park, bumper to bumper traffic, the lines are long. About 7 o'clock at night, and we get a 911 call. And the 911 caller says, hey, there's a guy in the parking lot of Walmart, and he was arguing with somebody on his phone, and he was cussing, and now he's just pacing back and forth, talking to himself. He kicked a grocery cart, it rolled into someone's car. Somebody needs to go up there and see what's going on. Now, what could that be? Could be a custody dispute, right? It was this guy's turn to get his kids for Christmas. His wife was supposed to bring the kids down from Maryland. Last minute she calls and says, I'm not bringing the kids. He's angry, he's hurt, he's disappointed. Could be a custody dispute. Could be a mental health crisis. Maybe the guy's got a diagnosis where he has auditory hallucinations. He is literally arguing with the voices in his head. Could be that. Maybe the guy's a military veteran, and he just found out his best friend in the Marine Corps, the guy who saved his life in Afghanistan, has just killed himself a few days before Christmas. Could be that. Maybe the guy was just fired from Walmart, and now he's out there pacing back and forth. deciding whether or not he's going to get that shotgun out of the truck and go back into that store and do something really evil. Could be that. Maybe the guy has worked double shifts for the last month to give his family a wonderful Christmas. He runs into Walmart to get one more thing, comes out, and finds out that somebody's broken into his car and stolen all of the gifts he was going to give his kids for Christmas. Could be that. Could be that the guy just shot 2 people in New York City the day before. He and his girlfriend were driving down to Florida. They hop off the interstate because they needed oil for the car. When he comes out of Walmart, she has changed her mind and she's taken off with the car. Now, if I were to pick any person at random from this audience and say to you, you're a member of this community, go up to Walmart, figure out what that guy's problem is, and solve it to everyone's satisfaction. You would look at me like I was the one having a mental health crisis, right? Because you'd rightly say, whoa, wait a minute, nobody's ever trained me to do that. I don't know how to deal with a stolen vehicle. That guy could have a gun. Nobody ever taught me how to deal with somebody in a mental health crisis. But that's precisely what we expect our police officers to do. That's what the community wants them to be able to do. To walk into this spectrum of possibilities, figure out what the problem is, and resolve it to everyone's satisfaction. Well, how do we do that? How do we train and educate people to do that? Well, the first thing you do is how we select them. And how we select people for the police department is a discussion for another night, but it suffices to say tonight, only 10% of the people who start the selection process with our agency will make it through to the end. Only 10%. Then the officers go to a 5-month police academy. After that, they come back to us. For about 4 months, they do field training. That's where they kind of take the stuff they've learned in the police academy, put it in the real world. So roughly about 9 to 11 months it takes to train a police officer, but we're still not done. Because in Virginia, once you finish that police academy and finish that field training, and you're going to be shocked by this, you're only required to do 40 hours of training every 2 years. That is the standard in Virginia. We go miles beyond that, okay? And we've actually just recently put up on our website the volume of training, but there's a few topics that people are particularly interested in, so I'm going to touch on these. Now, verbal de-escalation, response to resistance, defensive tactics, and fair and impartial policing. They're not really separate things. They're kind of woven together. They're integrated. So it's not like, well, we try verbal de-escalation. When that works, we stop doing that and move to something else. Okay, they're all woven together. So you have to think of it this way. If you look at a chef and ask that chef, well, what classes did you take in herbs and spices? Well, the chef can say, well, yeah, I took a couple of classes, but really it was woven into everything I did, all the classes I did. So let's start with the verbal de-escalation. We like to, after the academy, we like to get our officers on the road to doing 3 different levels. The first one, or the basic one, is something we call, it's a program called verbal judo, and it is exactly what it sounds like. If you know anything about judo, somebody throws a punch at you, and you deflect that energy and kind of get it in the direction you want it to go. Same thing with emotion. So this basic level, because listen, nobody calls 911 because they had a great day, all right? So we encounter people most of the time at some of their lowest moments, right? So there's a lot of emotion. Well, this verbal judo, we like them to complete that program within about the first year or 2 of completing their field training. It kind of depends on the availability of the class. That's the first level, how to de-escalate verbally. The second one is called crisis intervention training. This is it's like the intermediate level. This is much more focused on people who are genuinely in crisis. Lot of emphasis on mental health emergencies, but really anybody can go into crisis. You put enough stressors on a human being, they're going to go into a crisis, right? We can kind of navigate the bumps and bruises of life, death, divorce, financial problems, but you pile enough of those on somebody, they're going to go into crisis. So crisis intervention is the intermediate level. The advanced level is what we call our crisis negotiation team. These are the folks who really kind of have an interest and a real aptitude for helping people in crisis, and they'll be selected for our crisis negotiation team. This is very advanced training. They actually go through a school operated by the FBI. The training's designed and delivered by them. This is for those really high stress things. You know, the suicidal person has barricaded themselves inside their apartment with a rifle or something like that, those high ones. So we're constantly bringing our officers to higher and higher levels of training in terms of verbal de-escalation. Response to resistance, that's when we actually have to go hands-on, right? But we don't stop the verbal stuff. So for example, if I have a warrant for somebody, I'm saying, okay, put your hands behind your back, and they're not trying to punch me or anything, they're just stiffening up. If I put them in a wrist lock to bring their hand around, I'm still doing those verbal techniques, right? So I don't have to escalate the force. So that's what I mean by those things are integrated. So for response to resistance, when we train, there's 3 tiers, right? There's qualification, policy review, and then reality-based training. And that we'll do twice a year. So twice a year, the officers will go out. First, we'll requalify them with their firearm. Then we review all of our policies that have to do with using force on people. Then we'll put them through real-life kind of scenarios to make sure they can do that. They can take that policy and use that appropriate level of force to respond to whatever resistance is being put against them. The next one is defensive tactics training. This is kind of more of the hands-on stuff. It's a perishable skill, right? So anybody who's been involved in martial arts or even sports, right? If you haven't picked up a basketball in 5 years, you're not going to sink it, right? Because you lose those skills. So every 2 years, we make sure our officers are able to use these hands-on skills safely. Because if you don't use them the right way, they're either not going to be effective or you can unintentionally hurt someone. So we do that every 2 years. And the other one is fair and impartial policing. This is, sometimes you'll hear this called bias-based training or bias training or implicit bias training. Now you have to be kind of careful with this because there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. There's a lot of it out in the private sector. Because it is a new field of study, there's not a lot of rigorous scholarship. And because there's a lot of money to be made teaching this, it's about a $6 billion a year business. There's a lot out there in the private sector. There people are saying that, making claims that what this training can and can't do. We have selected a program we feel really, really solid about. We feel it's based on good research. It's called Fair and Impartial Policing. And it's through this that we discuss bias, all right? Now, here's the thing. This is education. It's not training. And here's the difference between training and education. Training is more physical than intellectual. Education's more intellectual than physical. So CPR, that's training, right? You finish your CPR class, you get your little CPR card. When you're talking about human bias training, it's educational. You can't go to a class, get a little card, and say, look, I don't have any more biases, right? This is different. So it's based on this philosophy. Every human being has biases. We have them individually, and we have them collectively. And there's a lot of things that go into creating our biases. Culture, environment, biology, these different things. Some biases are good and helpful. For example, as a community in the American legal system, we have a bias toward the innocence of the defendant. When someone walks into court, the judge isn't like, well, could be innocent, could be guilty. No, the judge starts with the bias, this person is innocent. They have to be proven guilty. Or we have personal biases that are helpful and productive. My marriage. I love my wife above every other woman in this world, right? I am biased toward her. And because of that, we're able to build a relationship. And we're biased toward our own children. We care for them more than any other children in the world. And because of that, we'll take responsibility. But what happens when you're blind to your bias, even if it's a good bias? Well, if I'm blind to my own bias, even a good one, I would think my children never did anything wrong. And that wouldn't be very helpful, right? I would, if my wife were blind to her bias to me, she could never help me be a better perfect person because she'd think I never did anything wrong. Then there are negative biases, right? Everybody has them for all those reasons I mentioned. So, for example, let's say I had a bias against women in policing. I don't, by the way. I think women make great cops and policing is better for it. But if I'm blind to that bias, I could be unintentionally causing harm. I'm not being helpful. I'm making things worse, and I'm hurting people. So what the bias training does is it invites the officer to take a journey, to start a journey of self-examination. It's really not new. It's very old wisdom, right? Self-examination, know yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. And then every year, we come back together again and we refresh that education. Where are you on your journey? Are you still thinking about, what your biases could be, and are you blind to them, or are you aware of them? If you're aware of them, then you can make better decisions. If you're blind to them, you could be making bad decisions. So that's the philosophy we use for bias training in a nutshell. Now, let me finish on this thought. I've been a cop for 20 years. I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy, a master's degree in criminal justice leadership. I have a binder full of certifications about 4 inches thick. And I want you to look at the gray hair on my head and the love in my eyes when I tell you there is no way on God's green earth I could go up to that Walmart and handle every single one of those situations to everyone's satisfaction. I'm going to fall short. And I'm not going to fall short because the training's bad, and I'm not going to fall short because the policy's bad. I'm going to fall short because I'm a human being. Now, what happens? What do you do when an officer falls short or you are not satisfied? Well, Lieutenant Coles is going to take it from there and explain that.
All right, I'm going to discuss a little bit about our complaint process. Good thing about CALEA is the complaint process is on our website. It's one of the things they require us to make public. So under our website, you can find all of this information under the I Want To tab. You can file a complaint either in person at the Fredericksburg Police Department headquarters, online, or by phone. The department utilizes a complaint form. However, the good thing about CALEA, it says that we can't make you use that form. You can fill out on a piece of paper, you can send an email, or you can call in and speak to one of our supervisors. We'll take your complaint. Your complaint also can be filed anonymously. The chief of police receives every complaint, and he comes and speaks with me, and he tells me to assign an investigation to either myself or to a divisional commander who can further assign it to a first-line supervisor. Complaints are only taken for allegations of employee misconduct, any dissatisfaction with police, with policies, procedures, philosophy, service levels, or legal standards of the agency. Again, all this is on our website within our directive system. So we have two types of investigations. We have a command inquiry investigation, and we have a professional standards investigation. Obviously, there's more information on my slides, but I'm not going to go through each and every one of those bullet points. Typically, a command inquiry is a violation of department policies or a violation of law, which is a Class 2 misdemeanor or lower. Professional standards investigation can be a serious breach of department policy, such as excessive force, or a violation of law that constitutes a Class 1 misdemeanor or higher. This will always be investigated by the Office of Professional Standards. So all complaints, if you file a complaint with the Fredericksburg Police Department, you will receive a letter saying that we received your complaint from the Chief of Police. If a investigation takes over 45 days, you will receive a follow-up letter saying that we are still investigating and your complaint has not been forgotten about. Once an investigator, whether it's myself or divisional commander or first line supervisor, completes an investigation, they will compile a report for the Chief of Police stating the results of their investigation, all their facts, and they will submit that investigation to the Chief of Police. The Chief of Police will take that investigation, review it, and he will make a determination if the complaint is sustained, not sustained, exonerated, it's a policy review, or it didn't occur at all. So if a complaint is serious enough for an officer to be suspended, the Chief of Police will make that order to suspend that officer. What comes with that is the officer will have his badge and gun and his credentials taken, and that person will be suspended from all police powers until the investigation is completed. With that, any administrative investigation is second to a criminal investigation. So what I'm saying is, if someone is in jeopardy of being charged with a criminal act, first and foremost, we don't investigate them. We assign those out to Virginia State Police, and if they're unavailable, one of our partners from the north or south, Spotsy or Stafford, will help us out with that, and we would have them do the criminal investigation. Administrative investigation, which means I'm looking at it for a policy violation, will be put on hold until the criminal investigation is over. Now, so during an investigation, everyone is involved is interviewed. We review all Axon body camera, any camera footage that was recorded by anybody else. Anyone who is interviewed for the complaint, whether it's from the outside, can be interviewed at police headquarters. However, we will give you an opportunity, if you're not comfortable to be interviewed at headquarters, to be interviewed anywhere you can be within a reasonable distance. Once everything is exhausted, again, the investigation is turned over to the Chief of Police, and all the results are determined to be factual or not by the Chief of Police. He gets to make that final determination. As you can see from the slide, if it's a accusation of an employee using alcohol or drugs on duty, they will have to submit to breath or blood test. So again, as you can see from the slide here, we have sustained, not sustained, exonerated, unfounded, and policy review. Policy review is very good for us. It could say that an employee did do something, but it was within our policy. If it's within our policy and we just think that the policy needs to be edited or re-looked at, we will do the policy review to make sure that we have the best practices in place to handle said situation. The Chief of Police is the only and the sole authority to issue discipline for any investigation. Once an investigation is over, the complainant will receive a letter from the Chief of Police saying the results of the investigation. The Chief of Police, again, will make a determination on discipline for any officer, and he is the sole authority to do that. So kind of wrap everything up. In 2019, as an agency, we responded to 37,123 calls for service requiring some type of police intervention. And this doesn't even count the encounters that officers have where they don't call it in on their radio, just someone coming up to them and asking them for directions or advice or whatever they may have at that point in time. So 37,123 recorded events. There were only 11 internal complaints. Of those 11 complaints, 9 were sustained and 2 were not. During that same time, we had 4 external complaints, 4 from the public, and 2 were sustained and 2 were unfounded. So what I take from that is we police ourselves pretty hard. As you can see, we have more internal complaints than we have from our citizens. So for use of force, all use of force reports are filled out by an officer when they use force. And from there, the use of force report goes to their first line supervisor. It could be their sergeant or it could be their lieutenant. If both of them are working on that particular day, the sergeant will get it, and then the second line supervisor will get it, which is the lieutenant. From the lieutenant, it goes up to the division commander, the captain, and then from there, it goes up to the chief of police and the Office of Professional Standards. Each person in this chain has to look at all the facts, has to look at the video, and has to determine if the use of force was within policy. So there's 4 levels of checks and balances that each report has to go through before a final decision is made. Again, the chief makes the final decision if the force was within policy or not within policy. All of our officers have body cameras, every single one on the street, so we have a huge advantage by looking at this body camera footage to make our decisions. So again, in 2019, 37,123 recorded events. To wrap everything up, in 2019, we had only 8 uses of force for the whole year of 2019. Out of those 8 uses of force, they were all within policy. All right. The use of force that was used during that time frame was 6 physical uses, which means hands-on, and then 2 incidents of OC spray.
All right, so I want to thank our presenters. They offered some really great information and did a great job with it. It was a ton of information, though, right? So everything that was on the slides there, we're going to make available to the community. We'll put it up on our website, hopefully by Friday. We'll have it up on our website. So I just want to touch base with a few more things with you, and then I'll get to the questions that I got from registration. So some exciting news. One thing is with our Citizens Advisory Panel. We are expanding the Citizens Advisory Panel. I've spent the last 6 weeks meeting with our current CAP members, meeting weekly, and we really revised our charter, and we've looked to expand it from 6 members to 9. We're also looking to be more inclusive of our community, not only in like the 4 wards being represented, but we also want at least 1 youth member on the group. And what I defined youth member is from 18 to 30 years old. We also want different groups represented and different neighborhoods. So we're looking forward to getting that information, that charter information, out to the community the beginning of next week. The charter will go up on our website. I will be receiving applications for 2 weeks after it goes up on our website. So if folks here are interested in applying to be on our Citizens Advisory Panel for the Fredericksburg Police Department, that information will be forthcoming next year. So please take a look at that. We're real excited about expanding our CAP. Another area that we're excited about at the Fredericksburg Police Department is, and information will be coming out on this soon, is we looked at our response to resistance directive over the last 6 weeks. The response to resistance is our use of force directive. And we thought it was great, but after May 31st and experiencing the civil unrest that we experienced, I heard from one demonstrator, they said, "Have you looked at the 8 Can't Wait campaign?" And honestly, I had not. Didn't know about 8 Can't Wait. So if you're familiar with 8 Can't Wait, you already know what I'm talking about. If you're not, you can just Google it, and it's some really great information. It's 8 things that police departments across the country can do right now to reduce the use of force and reduce officer-involved injuries. That caught my attention right away. So we took a look at it. When I say we, it was me, my command staff, all captains, all lieutenants. We compared the 8 Can't Wait campaign to our then response to resistance directive. And although we were doing pretty well, we hit almost all of the 8 Can't Wait, we didn't hit them all. So we looked at, should we incorporate those other things? So I'm excited to tell you tonight that we've incorporated everything that deals with 8 Can't Wait. So that directive we will be posting to the community here very soon also. And if not by the end of the week, then certainly early next week, so that everyone can take a look at it. The entire agency has been trained on it now. Lieutenant Coles visited every roll call, spoke to every sworn police officer, made them aware of what's in the changes to that directive, and it will be implemented effective tomorrow. Yes? Excellent. We're excited about that. Okay. So, I don't know about you, but I thought tonight went great. So great that I think we'll turn this into a series of events where we will open up this auditorium to the public, invite folks to come, and we will talk about different topics that we're doing at the Fredericksburg Police Department. We think we're doing a lot of really good things, but what we're not doing well is telling the community some of the things that we think we're really doing well. So I think that's one of the best parts of a forum like this. So I think you can expect this to be a series, and as early as maybe the middle of August, we'll post it up and we'll invite folks and we'll select some topics and we'll come together. Okay, so I'm going to answer a few of the questions that we received during the registration process. And I want to let you know that all of the questions that were received, we're not going to have time to go through all of them tonight. And some of them are just not applicable to our topics tonight, so I'm not going to address them. But we will answer them, the questions. I won't put names with the questions. I'll just list the questions, all questions that were received, whether during the registration process or here tonight. And we'll answer them, and we'll put them online for folks to go on and take a look at all those questions, okay? So one of the questions that we received was how many complaints have been filed against the Fredericksburg Police Department. And Lieutenant Coles did a great job in his presentation on that topic. But, you know, I just want to reiterate that during the calendar year 2019, our Professional Standards Office received and investigated a total of 15 complaints. 11 of those complaints were generated internally, and 9 came via our formal complaint form from citizens in our community. Of those 11 internal complaints, 9 were sustained and 2 were not. And of the 4 external, 2 were sustained and 2 were not. One of the best things that we have, and we've had it since 2014, pre-Ferguson, one of the greatest pieces of equipment that the police department uses is body cameras. We've been using body cameras pre-Ferguson, and we think it is the greatest piece of equipment that we've ever purchased. Now, these things are expensive, and I'll tell you that we were the first in our area to have body cameras. We were committed to it then, and it was expensive to get into that. We had to do without other equipment so that we could get these cameras because we felt they were that important. And post-Ferguson, body cameras became a huge issue, and there are still police agencies around in Virginia, to include some of our regional partners, that still don't have body-worn cameras. We've been doing it for 6 years. We're real proud of that. But one of the best things is when a police action is occurring, that camera is required to be on. And when we get a complaint, we go straight to the video. Straight to the video. And for the ones that were not sustained here, it's because they just didn't happen. And the video proved it, okay? So the body camera footage is incredible. So with 73% of the complaints being generated internally and I'll explain what I mean by that. This goes to show that the Fredericksburg Police Department is policing itself, and we take complaints very seriously at FPD. Internal complaints could be a number of things. One example is if an officer misses court. We have it in our directive system that if you miss court without a valid excuse in a 12-month calendar month, then you get a written counseling at the squad level. You miss it twice within that running 12 months, then it turns into a command inquiry investigation, and we investigate it. And the discipline will continue if officers continue to miss court in that rolling 12 months. So that's just one example of an internal complaint, okay? All right, another question. What are the average years of service for FPD police officers? Great question. At the officer level, honestly, we're really young, extremely young. I'll give you some statistics here in a second. We have 72 or 73 sworn police officers at the Fredericksburg Police Department, if you count the river steward. He gets us to 73. And of those, most of them work in the patrol division, and most of them, when you're a new officer, you get assigned to the patrol division. That's where you work. You got to be on for a period of time and have to go through a process before you can move up to detective and work in the detective division or even some of the other areas, specialties. We have 33 police officers between 0 years of experience and 5 years of experience, 33 of those 73 authorized. We have 6 officers between 6 and 10 years of experience, and we have 4 officers with greater than 10 years of experience. Those are the line staff police officers. When you look at the sergeants that we have, I did an average years of service, and the average time on the job for a sergeant is 11 years on the job. And a sergeant is the first line supervisor level at FPD. When we looked at lieutenants, they have an average of 18 years of service, and captains have an average of 21 years of service within policing in general, not just at FPD, because sometimes we hire folks that have other policing experience. All that said, command staff's not doing bad, but it tells me I need to keep my command staff where they are, because you can't beat having that institutional knowledge. You have to have it. But you especially have to have it when you have a young line staff like we have. We need those senior folks really working with these young police officers and giving them the time to really mature into seasoned police officers. So that was a great question. Okay, here's another question, and we're going to end on this one. When will I release an external report related to police response to demonstrations from May 31st through June the 2nd? Great question. As some of you may know, at the June 23rd City Council meeting, I committed to completing our internal review of use of force incidents and after action reports by the end of this month, end of July. I'm happy to report that I will have all those internal reviews in my office by Friday this week, 2 days from now. I'll have them in hand. And I plan to provide the public with a written preliminary report regarding those topics next week, Thursday, August 6th. There will be a preliminary report that's provided to the media and the community, Thursday, August 6th. Can anyone do a ride-along, and how do I sign up, if so? Great question. We would love you to do a ride-along. The problem with doing ride-alongs right now is we're still dealing with COVID-19. So that's an issue right now, but we love the ride-along program. It offers some great experience to go out and ride along 11-hour shift with a police officer and see some of the things that our officers have to work their way through. It's pretty challenging sometimes. Okay. How does the police department let the residents know about the forum where residents can speak to CALEA representatives? Okay, when CALEA comes and does their on-site, we post it on our website, we post it on our Facebook page, We advertise it. Does it get advertised in the newspaper? I think it very well may go into the newspaper also. So we try to get that information out there, not only of the day that you can come and speak to the CALEA representatives, but also the phone number that you can call in if you can't come in person. Is it mandatory for all officers to have body cameras on when they exit their cars to investigate a call or a stop? The quick answer to that is yes. Our directive states that officers have to have their body cameras turned on and activated anytime that they are doing a police action. That's answering a call for service, that's making a traffic stop, that's making an arrest, whatever it might be. So the answer to that is yes. If they are doing a police action, they are required to have that body camera on.
Hey, just let me clarify that.
Sure.
If the officer's getting out of the car, going into the 7-Eleven, or they're just walking downtown and people, start chatting with them, typically you don't turn it on because the battery will eat up the battery, so they can't keep it on the whole shift. That's why when they're going to do a police action, that's when they're obligated to turn it on. Sometimes you end up talking to someone and it turns into a call for service, and then they'll turn it on. So they don't do it for just casual encounters.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Well, all right, folks, thank you again for being here with us tonight. All of your questions that have come in, I will answer for you, and we'll post online, okay?